Let's talk about Ra's al Ghul in my DC cinematic universe. Before we can properly discuss Ra's, we must first discuss his father, the Sensei. Now in the comics, this is a character known as the Sensei, and he is Ra's al Ghul's immortal father. The problem is that Sensei is a Japanese term for master, and Sensei is Chinese. He's from China. He doesn't know karate, he knows kung fu. So in my DC cinematic universe, this character will be referred to as Shifu, not Sensei. This man came from the area that would eventually become Hong Kong and moved to the area that would eventually become Bialia, or, like the eastern part of Egypt. It is there where he would meet and fall in love with a local woman by the name of Rue. And together they would have a son whose name would be lost to time. As the son grew up, he became fascinated by medicine and healing. The boy would grow up and become a physician, and he would become obsessed with finding the fabled Fountain of Youth. Now, in his search for the Fountain of Youth, he would become a pretty renowned physician of the local area, so much so that the local sultan brought him in to heal his very sick wife. Unfortunately, the wife's sickness was beyond Ra's ability to take care of, and so she died. And the Sultan was angry at Ra's, called him a failure. And unfortunately for Ra's, not very long after this very public failure is when he would discover a Lazarus pit. Now, Ra's wasn't a fool. He did scientific studies on this pit to make sure it could do the things that he wanted. And it could. This pit could heal any injury, heal any disease, and it even made people younger. One of the very first things he did was bathe his mother and father in this pit, and both of them, before his very eyes, de-aged to their physical primes. Now, armed with this Lazarus pit, Ra's became an even more famous physician, but the Sultan heard about this and was convinced that Ra's had known about this pit from the beginning and purposefully let his wife die. So the Sultan sent some of his men to kill Ra's. They slit his throat and threw his body into the pit. That was their mistake. Ra's dead body was resurrected by the pit, and in that frenzy that happens when you get resurrected by a Lazarus pit, Ra's tore the two men apart. Ra's himself was an accomplished kung fu master, having been trained by his father his entire life. The rage finally wore off, and Ra's returned home, only to find that the Sultan's cruelty didn't end with him. He found the burnt remains of his house where his wife and daughter were. And so, with the help of his father, Ra's and the Shifu broke in to the Sultan's palace and assassinated the Sultan. After that, Ra's installed himself as the head of this area. And this is where the League of Shadows would get its start. Ra's abandoned his former identity and adopted the identity of the head of the demon. So just like the tradition that I have in my League of Shadows, where you have to kill your past self to become your new self, Ra's was the first one to do that. And so if you wonder why his name was lost to time, it is because he personally made sure it was erased from it. League of Shadows became a force dedicated to making sure that humanity survives no matter the cost. An entire organization dedicated to the idea that the ends justify the means. So they're not an outright evil organization, which is why Bruce Wayne is so cool with joining them, but Bruce just didn't agree with their methods of assassinating anyone who disagreed with them. But before Ra's even met Bruce Wayne, Ra's would meet a very important woman. A woman by the name of Melisande. Melisande was a native of France that Ra's met just before the start of World War II. The two of them would fall madly in love. Their ideals matched absolutely perfectly, and Melisande would give Ra's his first child in over 300 years, a baby girl which she would name Talia. And Talia I will cover tomorrow.